Let's not kid ourselves here, because a lot of JRPGs lately can be rather juvenile, but that wasn't always the case. Whenever I was a kid, a lot of games had adult characters, adult protagonists, and they definitely dealt with adult themes, but somewhere along the way, developers kind of lost the plot. But this year's Expedition 33 got me thinking about some of the more mature RPGs that I've played throughout the years, and I do hope that they will see a resurgence. So here I want to present to you 10 of my favorite grown-up mature RPGs, beginning with one that you might not think is all that mature, but underneath its art style lies a pretty compelling tale, and that's Tales of Vesperia. This here could very well be my favorite Tales of game, and the level of maturity has a lot to do with that. But I can hear a lot of you out there saying, David, what are you talking about? This is a Tales of game. They're not mature. And well, yeah, I agree it does have some stupid characters and its moments of levity, but all games have that. But what all games don't have is a take-no-prisoners, murderous bitch on wheels as a protagonist. You play as Yuri Lowell, a former Imperial Knight who grows disillusioned with injustice and decides to take matters into his own hands. You'll be diving headfirst into political corruption, personal accountability, and moral ambiguity, as Yuri's journey from vigilante to leader challenges black and white morality, because most of his decisions have no clear right or wrong answer. And it definitely recognizes that doing the right thing often comes at a personal cost, and it rarely comes clean. Sometimes it comes bloody. And hey y'all, if you are enjoying this video, please do be sure to smash that like button and subscribe if you do want more content like this, because it helps me out a ton. And now, let's look at another game that I bought the Xbox 360 for, Lost Odyssey. This game is so good. This is what Final Fantasy XIII should have been. You know, a gorgeous turn-based game featuring towns, a true world map, tons of secrets, and most importantly, mature storytelling. You play as Kaim, an immortal who has lived for 1,000 years, but has forgotten much of his past. But over the course of the game, he not only rediscovers and reunites with his family, but he also slowly regains his memories with 1,000 years of dreams, which are kind of like short stories that delve into themes of grief, memory, and the fleeting nature of human life. The gameplay is traditional JRPG fare, but its emotional core is distinctly adult, offering reflections on love, loss, and the weight of time. Kaim's journey is less about saving the world and more about rediscovering humanity, which is definitely a poignant take on the meaning of life from somebody who can't die. And while Lost Odyssey was created by the creator of Final Fantasy himself, let's now pivot on over to an offering from Square itself with Treasure of the Rudras. We never did get this game in America officially, but it has been translated into English unofficially, and after playing through it, it's not really a big mystery as to why we never received it. Not only is the gameplay and magic system just a little bit complex, but the storytelling is a masterclass, as you cope with environmental degradation as well as an impending apocalypse, and you get to see the way that people embrace their ultimate demise. You see, the world ends and begins in cycles of 4,000 years, and this next cycle is set to end in just 2 weeks. So you play as 3 different protagonists, each out to do their best to stop this cycle. But while doing so, you'll face personal revelations that mirror religious and mythological cycles of destruction and rebirth. And you'll end up recognizing that civilizations fall not out of malice, but out of entropy. And it will force you to consider the impermanence of cultures, religions, people, empires, ideologies, and even yourself. And now, let's look at another game on the SNES, but one that did release here in America, and it did shock me to the core whenever I played it as a teenager. And that's Breath of Fire 2. Well, the first Breath of Fire was dark, dealing with, the whole genocide of the Light Dragon clan. Breath of Fire 2 takes that darkness up a notch, and it begins with a haunting premise. You are abandoned and forgotten by even your own family, and this sets the stage for a journey defined by identity, faith, and more importantly, trauma, and lots of it. As Ryu becomes an adult, he's joined up with a diverse cast of misfits, each carrying their own emotional baggage, like the exiled Princess Nina, shunned by everybody simply because she was born with black wings. Eventually, you'll confront the corrupt church and fight a false god, a bold critique of blind faith and institutional exploitation. The game has grown up not because it's violent or bloody or gory or anything else like that, but because it explores how trauma shapes adulthood and how confronting systemic lies comes at a personal cost. And now for another one, and I played this just a couple of years later in high school, and that's Xenogears. Hot off the heels of being scandalized by the evil church in Breath of Fire 2, now Square Enix wanted to traumatize me even more by straight up crucifying my old party members in Xenogears. I clasped my pearls and I got out my smelling salts. Now that Square was out from under Nintendo's thumb, they were free to do whatever they wanted, and they took that freedom and they ran with it. This cerebral masterpiece tackles psychology, religion, and philosophy, and nothing is off the table here. The hero Faye suffers from some sort of dissociative identity disorder, and his journey involves confronting his buried trauma along with all of his existential dread. This is definitely a grown-up game in every sense, as it deals with Freudian analysis, and Gnostic and Christian symbolism, death, love, prostitution, racism, and just about anything else under the sun, all while still being a pretty sweet and fun turn-based RPG. But now, while that was heavy, let's look at something a little bit more lighthearted, and that's the Like a Dragon series, starring our favorite hobo, Ichiban, with Yakuza Like a Dragon and Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth. Ichiban is easily my favorite new protagonist that I've seen in quite some time. As a child, the deck was stacked against him. He was abandoned by his parents and grew up in Tokyo's red light district, only to take the fall for a crime that he didn't commit and then serve 18 years in prison. And all of his thanks for that? Nothing. Welcome to the real world, kid. But he doesn't let his circumstances get him down, and he redefines what it means to be a protagonist in the Yakuza series, as he's not some stoic, masculine caricature of what a man's supposed to be. Instead, he exudes warmth, humility, and heart, qualities that deeply resonate with me as an adult. Because if you think that being a man is just getting a whole bunch of tits and ass and being stoic and emotionless, no, that's just juvenile. Ichiban is a real man's man. Now let's look at another man with the weight of the world on his shoulders and the destiny that he struggles to fulfill in Lufia 2, Rise of the Sinistrals. Not only is the story absolutely tragic, but it's easily one of the best games on the SNES, and I dare say, one of the best RPGs ever made still. This combines turn-based combat along with puzzle-laden dungeons, and most importantly, a completely tragic love story. At first, Maxim is just content, living his life in a small town with his girlfriend Tia. But as the hero of the village, he quickly sets off and discovers his fate, as the hero fated to die, which you see if you played the first game in the series before playing the sequel. Though throughout the course of the game, you will see his relationship with Tia shatter before your eyes as she leaves, never to be seen again on Maxim's wedding day, only for him to find temporary happiness in the birth of his child before the wheels of fate begin to turn, and he's then forced to sacrifice himself to save the world. Lufia 2 frames heroism not as a triumph, but as an inevitability, as it is Maxim's duty and his fate to fulfill it, and he cannot escape it. You know that the ending won't be happy, because you've seen it before in the first game, but you still definitely feel that impact whenever it comes. And speaking of emotional impacts, let's talk about Suikoden 2. This is another tragic tale, but instead of dealing with love, this is a tale of friendship turned rivalry, as you follow Ryu and his best friend Joey as they find themselves on opposing sides of a civil war that will test their loyalty, friendship, and ideology. The game balances political intrigue with personal tragedy, turn-based combat, 108 recruitable party members who each have their own personality, as well as diverse perspectives on loyalty, ambition, and peace. You would be remiss, though, if you thought that the storytelling shied away from the brutality of war or the pain of betrayal, because Suikoden doesn't do that. Instead, it puts you in a front row seat and forces you to make the decisions, the personal decisions, on who lives and who dies. Will you run away from it all and just live in a cabin in the woods? Will you kill your own best friend, and will your sister survive? The conflicting visions of peace will lead you down a darker, morally ambiguous path because nothing is clear-cut here. And now, let's look at another game set during war, but this time set in the real world, and during a real war. World War I, that is, with Shadow Hearts 1 and 2. It's just amazing what happens whenever an RPG gives you a protagonist who's not a bright-eyed and bushy-tailed teeny bopper. Yuri here is the total opposite. He's not winning anything with the power of friendship, instead, he's winning through demonic possession. But as you go through the game, you see that it's really his inner demons that he struggles with, as they're rooted in guilt, love, and the desire to break free from the fate that seems to haunt him. It definitely does not shy away from mental trauma or even death, as the love of his life, Alice, passes away in the first game,
And then the second game is its direct sequel, and Yuri's journey has now pivoted from protecting Alice to instead telling a story about coming to terms with grief and loss, but still reclaiming your purpose and confronting the consequences of your own past decisions. And now, let's get to the game that actually inspired this entire video, the most adult game of this year by far, and that's Clair Obscur Expedition 33. This is a game that shook me to my core, with more curveballs thrown at me than the World Series. Just when you think that you know what's going on, something else comes around and hits you like a ton of bricks. The game is an emotional roller coaster, and it begins with death, and lots of it, as it centers on a world trapped in this death loop, where the paintress wakes each year to paint her curse number and garbage everyone there out of existence. This is one of the first things that you see, followed shortly thereafter by a wholesale slaughter of everybody else in the expedition, and then an attempted suicide. And then this is followed by death upon death upon death, family trauma and struggle and emotional scarring. No one is actually who you think they are. Everybody has some secret that they're hiding, and this is not a game for the faint of heart, because you definitely do need the maturity to handle the subject matter. I've got to say, mature and adult RPGs are some of my favorites in the genre, and I had a great time going over these fantastic games in this list. But now I've got to ask you, what are your favorite mature RPGs and why? And what games would have you added to this list? Let me know in the comments, and let's all talk and chat about it. And if you like this video, please be sure to leave a comment, hit that like button, and as always, subscribe, and have a good day.